How's everybody doing? Oh, good. There's some grammatically correct answers out there. Very nice. All right. Have my slideshow up. Yes. All right. So we are talking about today Moses and the art of failure. Before we got into talking about failure, I figured I would let Seinfeld do it since he does it better than I do. Can you guys hit that?
About a month ago, the World Cup was going on. I enjoy any sporting event where nations get involved. I find that the most exciting. The Olympics is really my favorite sporting event, although I think I have a problem with that silver medal. I think if I was an Olympic athlete, I would rather come in last than win the silver. If you think about it. You know, you win the gold, you feel good. You win the bronze, you think, well, at least I got something. But you win that silver, that's like, congratulations, you almost won. Of all the losers, you came in first of that group. You're the number one loser. No one lost ahead of you. And they don't lose by much. You know, these short races, 300ths of a second, 200ths of a second. I don't know how they live with that the rest of their lives, because you got to tell the story. Everyone wants to hear the story. Wow, congratulations, silver medal. Did you trip? Did you not hear the gun go off? Tell us what happened. It's 100th of a second. And people say, what was the difference in the margin there? What was it? Well, it was like from now. It was like now. That was it. I trained, I worked out, I exercised my entire life. I never had a date, I never had a drink, I never had a beer. I was doing push-ups since I was a fetus. I flew halfway around the world. Everybody I knew in my whole life was there. I said, oh. And they always had that photo finish. You know, the photo finish was always silver, gold. This is the whole race. Gold, silver, bronze, dead last. Greatest guy in the world, never heard of him. You know, guys gotta be thinking if I had a pimple, I would have won.
All right, yeah, so we are talking about failure. Had to start with that. It's one of my favorite Seinfeld routines. Can we jump back so I can have control again? Nice. Okay, so we're looking at Deuteronomy 3, and Deuteronomy 3 is the moment when Moses comes in second, when he gets the silver medal. No offense to anyone who's ever come in second at a race here. You did a great job. Good work. You have nothing to be ashamed of. But you were this close, right? Okay. All right, so at this point, Moses has been wandering around in the wilderness with God's people for a very long time, and we've been following him for a very long time. And the whole point is he wants to get to the promised land. That is it. He has done all this stuff. He's helped them get free from slavery. He has led them through the Red Sea. 10 Commandments, brought those down, wandered around through the wilderness for a long time, and we get this moment here. So, follow along with me. Yes, I'm in the wrong place. Okay. Deuteronomy 20. Now, the people of Israel at this point, they've been griping about something as usual, which is kind of their scene. And here's what they do. I'm just going to read it up here. Now, there was no water for the congregation, and they assembled themselves together against Moses and against Aaron. And the people quarreled with Moses and said, "Would that we had perished when our brothers perished before the Lord. Why have you brought the assembly of the Lord into this wilderness, that we should die here, both we and our cattle? And why have you made us come up out of Egypt to bring us to this evil place? It is no place for grain or figs or vines or pomegranates, and there's no water to drink." So the first thing the Israelites are saying is like, hey, things are really bad. Why didn't you just leave us in slavery? Okay. Then Moses and Aaron went from the presence of the assembly to the entrance of the tent of meeting and fell on their faces. And the glory of the Lord appeared to them, and the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, "Take the staff, Assemble the congregation, you and Aaron, your brother, and tell the rock before their eyes to yield its water. So you shall bring water out of the rock for them and give drink to the congregation and their cattle. Okay, so once again, God being incredibly merciful. The people are whining. They have every reason not to. God has no reason to show them mercy. He decides to. But then we have this. And Moses took the staff from before the Lord as he commanded him. Then Moses and Aaron gathered the assembly together before the rock, and he said to them. Okay, so Moses is not doing what God asked him to do. Hear now, you rebels, shall we bring water for you out of this rock? Shall we bring? Not God, shall we? And Moses lifted up his hand and struck the rock with his staff twice. Also, God didn't tell him to do that. And water came out abundantly, and the congregation drank, and their livestock. And the Lord said to Moses and Aaron, because you did not believe in me, to uphold me as holy in the eyes of the people of Israel, therefore you shall not bring this assembly into the land that I have given them. So Moses has failed. God gave him an assignment to do. He took credit for something God was doing. He did it against God's will. And after all of this, God is like, hey, sin is sin. There's a punishment. You're not going to go into the promised land. Okay, pretty devastating stuff for Moses. I want to jump into this and talk more about us and failure as well. But before I do that, let's pray together real quick. Father, thank you for today. Thank you for your word, even the tough parts. Thank you that Thanksgiving break is really close, that you've been faithful to us for this whole school year. I ask that you continue to be with us. Bless this time that we have together. In Jesus' name, amen. How many of you have read or seen Band of Brothers? Anybody? Band of Brothers is a book about the 101st Airborne Easy Company, who were paratroopers in World War II. It's one of the most amazing books I've ever read. So the paratroopers, essentially, World War II happens, and in America you can be drafted or you can volunteer. And certain people knew that the 101st, the paratroopers, this is the first time anybody had really had a unit devoted to jumping out of planes, which must have been terrifying. And a lot of the paratroopers, they had never even been in a plane when they signed up to be a paratrooper, jumping out of a plane, which is amazing. They signed up to be paratroopers because they knew it was the best. They knew only the best signed up. And they thought, well, you know what, if I'm going to go over and I'm going to fight, I want the best around me. I don't want to just be drafted and put wherever. I want people that I can totally depend on. Not that the other people weren't trustworthy, but this was their reasoning. And with their training, this is what they had to do. So they took 5,300 men and whittled them down to 1,800. Okay? They had a 3-mile hill, 3 miles up, 3 miles down, that they did 4 times a week. At night, the first march, they marched 11 miles, full gear on. They had canteens full of water, but at the end of the march, their colonel would come and make sure they hadn't consumed any of the water. So they had the canteen, but the point was you weren't allowed to drink it, right? And every night that they would march, they would add more miles on top of that, 1 or 2, so it'd be 11, and it would go up, it would go up. They had situations in which they would kill pigs and lay their intestines out and have the soldiers army crawl through them under live ammunition being fired over their heads. One point, the colonel had them come all to the mess hall, gave them spaghetti, let them eat as much as they wanted, and then called for them to run 3 miles up and 3 miles down. And whoever threw up and decided they couldn't make it was out of the troop, okay? At any point, you could say, I'm done and I'm out, and they were begging them to say that. Because they were like, this is a serious war, people are going to die, we do not want you if you are not tough, okay? They finally do all this, and then they have us to celebrate achieving this. They hear that one of the opposing armies from Japan has done a 100-mile trek in 72 hours. And so they're like, well, we're going to do more. So they load up all their men, they give them full equipment, they have to march 118 miles in 75 hours, which is 4 miles an hour. It was very cold, and some of the soldiers by the end literally could not feel their feet and were being carried by their other guys. And even after all that, they finally had to jump to get their wings to jump out of the plane. And if at any point when you stood in the plane ready to jump, you said, no, I'm too afraid, I can't do it, you were out. You would go back home. You were done. So this was a huge deal when those who made it finally made it. And this is amazing. So they finally graduate, they get their wings, which they have literally almost died for these wings. And they give them, to celebrate, a couple of days leave, and they say, you need to be back Sunday night at 5 p.m. Well, lo and behold, everybody gets back, except for 9 guys at 5 p.m. So they call the whole regiment together. They all get in a parade format. A drummer stands up and begins beating a slow drum beat. They call out the name of the first guy who was back an hour late. He comes forward. In front of the whole group, they come up, they rip his wings off. They rip his patches off. They tell him to take off his uniform. They make him put on civilian clothes. They put him in a car, and they escort him home with guys in machine guns. Okay, obviously a different time. But I think that is, when I think of failure, right? Now those guys, they had already done so much. I think that is the biggest thing I can think of to fear, right? That you're in this group, it looks like you're one of them, and your name is called. And the person is saying, you don't belong. And when those soldiers stood forward, there was actually guys taking pictures of them. And the other soldiers said that was the thing that just destroyed them. Was not only that these guys stood forward and had this stuff ripped off and they had to do all this, but that somebody was taking a picture of it to document it, right? Failure. So I think we can commiserate a little bit with that feeling, that is my greatest fear, right? That my inadequacy would come out, that my name would be called out in front of all my peers. I would think I belong, and someone would strip it all off and say, you don't belong. Yes, so for us culturally, right now, it feels like we're in a place where we say failure is not an option. Maybe you've heard this phrase, failure is not an option. Now logically, it doesn't make sense because failure is actually an option. But what you're saying at that moment is, I refuse to even consider the fact that I may fail. I will myself to victory, right? Failure is not an option. David Zoll from Mockingbird says, the purpose of success has long since been subordinated to success itself. In the minds of many, success exists almost entirely for its own sake. Failure success has become the only rubric through which vast swathes of us interpret our existence. The point is, what he's saying there is, we are so obsessed with failure and success, we have even kind of forgot what we are succeeding for, right? We don't succeed to do something. We just succeed because we succeed. That's what we do. I had a student, I think my first year here, just began pressing on that student. The student was like, I made a B on this test, I need to make an A. I'm like, well, why do you need to make an A? They're like, so I can get a good GPA. I'm like, why do you need a good GPA? So I can go to a good college. I'm like, why do you want to do that? So I can get a good job. And I'm talking to this person, like, yeah, but the job you said you wanted, you don't even have to go to college to get that job. They're like, well, for a backup job. And I kept pressing why, and it was clear that this student hadn't ever really asked those questions. But the tyranny of the urgent, success, failure, was so vivid and strong that the student had never asked, why am I succeeding? What am I doing it for? Am I trying to succeed because I actually want something at the end of it, or is it just success? I remember always my least favorite part of the academic year was getting back the report card. I don't know if anybody else feels this way. Well, other than, not because I'm like, I failed everything. But you would work really hard, and I always felt it was like, I just got something in the mail with some letters on it. And it was always like, I did all that for this? It's kind of lame. I could have typed this up and printed it out myself. Right? So we, though, in this culture of fear, I think we fear failure so much that we make fear our taskmaster. Okay? In the same way that the Egyptians were the Israelites were slaves to the Egyptians, right? They were driven by them. We make fear our taskmaster. We say, I don't want to fail at any cost, so I'm going to let fear drive me to never fail. And this looks a couple of ways. There are lots more, but these are the few I thought of. So academic fear. First, there's the not going to touch it, right? The not going to touch it student is like, I am terrified of failure, so I'm just going to not actually work that hard, so that at least I can say something like, I could get A's if I tried, right? At least I have that illusion in my head, like I can say, yeah, if I really worked at it, I could get straight A's, but I don't have to face the failure. So I'm just gonna back off, I'm gonna play it cool, okay? There's number two, which is the credit card student. So credit card student operates like this. It's like, I've got this blank check for, let's say a project is due in 4 days. For 2.5 days, I've got a blank check, right? And I'm just gonna Netflix or whatever. And then when the crunch time is on and there's 8 hours away, I hand the whip to Fear and I say, get me there, right? And I start stressing out and I get anxious and I'm like, God, nobody likes being around me right then. And I stay up all night and I turn it in. And then I'm back to my blank check, thank God, until the next time when I hand the whip to Fear again, get me there. Right. And then there's the late lights all week. This person has never missed their homework ever, and Fear has the whip and Fear has never let it go, right? Fear has been driving them the whole way. I was probably in this category. If you've never missed your homework ever, you probably should. I said that. You should probably not do your homework at least once this year. You can, if you are this student, you know who I am, okay? I'm not talking about somebody who's like never done it, and you come and say, Mr. Barber said, all right? If you have never missed your homework, you should, I mean, you'll make a 0, but you should probably do it and tell your teacher, remember Mr. Barber said this is for my character. Okay. And lastly is this, the being average, not great is awesome. This is the student who looks at, surveys all of it, and decides, I'm going to be average, but make that look like the coolest thing, right? They're like, man, I make B's, and I'm so much happier than you fools chasing the man. You guys are ridiculous, right? Studying for that, dude. Relax. Yes. So these are ways I think of that Fear plays out academically, right? And generally, hanging over all these things is this image, I think, of Fear with the whip, just driving. And then there's social fear, right? I'm a turtle. Go in the shell. The social turtle says, that's funny. Okay. It looked better on paper. The social turtle says, I'm never going to allow an opportunity to fail socially, right? That the worst thing I could imagine would be failing in front of people. So I'm just never going to put myself in a position where that may happen. I think a lot of us can associate with that. The second one is image control to Major Tom, which is a David Bowie reference, rest in peace. The image control person is obsessed with how they look, their image. You're probably up all night on your phone with Instagram, all these kinds of things. You maybe even think in like social media language, right? You think a thought, and the framework it's always going through is, can I post this? Can I share this? Can I post this? Can I share this? Constantly think about your own image. Maybe you have a conversation with someone and it was weird and you analyze it for the next like 4 hours, right? I definitely was in that boat in high school. And the last one is the don't wanna but I gotta, which is like, so you have this fear of being socially rejected, socially inadequate, and you say, I don't really want to date this guy, but I kind of gotta, right? It'll look good. Or, I don't really want to be at this party or be doing this, but I gotta. Because people will respect me if I do this. Don't want to, but I gotta. So, at the core of this, what is going on? At the core of this is, we all kind of recognize that we are inadequate, right? And we really, really don't want people to know that about us, particularly to its fullest extent. Maybe we'll give people a little bit here and there, right? Because we gotta look human, guys, Don't want to be a robot. But we don't give people the full version of ourselves. I'm not even saying that you should, but I'm just saying that this person, nobody knows their full selves. We are terrified of people figuring out that we're inadequate, right? And socially, grades, there are all these places where basically you can be called out, your name can be called out, and your uniform and all your hard work can be stripped off and reveal that you are actually kind of inadequate, right? When Moses failed in that section, in seminary I've been reading straight through the Bible, and Moses writes the first several books. And so I felt like I was like, you might laugh, I felt like I was like friends with Moses, my reading buddy. And when he failed and couldn't go into the promised land, I was devastated. I was really upset. Does everyone fail? And yes, right? We all fail. We are all inadequate in some way. So what do we do about this? The fact that we are inadequate, the fact that we are driven by fear. Well, they call it the expulsive power of a new affection. It's a big way to say this, but think about the times you aren't driven by fear and anxiety. Think about the times you aren't driven by fear and anxiety. When are those times? And not times when you just kind of numb yourself, when you like Netflix out, but like times when you're fully engaged and you are not afraid. Maybe some of you have never experienced that, and that is really sad. And I think you should probably process that with somebody. I think most of us, if we answer that question, it's going to be when we're motivated by our love of something, right? We love playing Ultimate Frisbee. And when you play Ultimate Frisbee, you're not thinking about what other people think about you as much. You're like a dog playing catch, right? You're happy. And you're kind of not self-aware. Same with, dating can be very performance-driven. And the first time when I started dating Jessica, it was the first time I dated somebody and it had not been about performance. Because I just really liked Jessica, right? I was really happy to see her, so I wasn't constantly like, should I call them? Do I do this? Do I take her to the date? What will that say? I was just like, oh boy, Jessica, Right? It's the same thing. So what we have to do is, what I'm getting at is, the only way to replace fear, the only way to replace being driven by fear is we have to love something, right? We have to love something more than we are afraid. And I think what we're getting at here in this passage is Moses failed and the people just want to go back. They're just like, hey, look, fear got it done, right? I get what you're saying about fear, but fear gets me AIDS, okay? So I trust fear. I get what you're saying. I should back off and maybe try something else, but what if I just fall through the floor, Can you imagine if everybody let go of fear and just did something that they love? We might actually all get to know each other. We might see who we are. It'd be kind of a beautiful thing. Failure wouldn't be so terrifying. There's a scene in Lord of the Rings. I think this is the first Lord of the Rings reference this whole year in chapel, which is amazing. Because my first year, there were 7 references in the first 2 chapel talks. Anyway, so if you haven't seen Lord of the Rings, you should read the books first. If you still haven't seen The Lord of the Rings, then watch the extended editions, and don't watch the Hobbit movies because they're terrible. Okay. They really are. They're bad, guys. They're bad. Just accept it. Read the book. They're bad. Okay. I'll argue with you about that later. They really are. They're so bad. All right. So Gollum is this character. He wants the ring, and he is driven by fear. And there's this one conversation he has with himself. Yes. He has this one conversation he has with himself. It's Gollum and Smeagol. Hang with me. Gollum is kind of the distorted by fear one, and Smeagol is like his true self. And he has this conversation with himself in the movie, The Two Towers, which is just a showstopper. And just listen to this. It's the dialogue between kind of fear and love, right? Gollum says, we wants it. I'm not going to do the voice. We wants it. We needs it. No, I'm really not. Must have the precious. They stole it from us, sneaky little hobbits, wicked, tricky, false. Smeagol says, no, not master. Yes, precious, false. They will cheat you, hurt you, and lie. But master is my friend. You don't have any friends. Nobody likes you. Not listening, not listening. You're a liar and a thief. Nope. Murderer. Go away, I hate you, I hate you. Where would you be without me? I saved us. It was me. We survived because of me. Not anymore. What did you say? Master looks after us now. We don't need you anymore. What? Leave now and never come back. Leave now and never come back. And there's a pause, and he says, we told him to go away, and away he goes, gone, gone, gone. Smeagol is free. That's a powerful moment. I think for a lot of us that probably echoes true. I know it does for me, goodness. That we've been driven by fear so long we don't even know what it looks like to risk being driven by anything else. We are so afraid of failing. So when Moses failed, one of the things that hit me, I'm driving back from seminary, Moses has just failed, and I'm furious that God has not allowed him to go to the promised land. And I literally say in my car, God, if Moses can't hang out with you, who can? And then suddenly gospel. Right? If Moses can't get to you, who can? And it's like, right, exactly. There is one who can. Now, I'm going to give two applications, okay? So, I'm not just going to Jesus bomb you. If you are not a Christian, I want to give you something to walk away with this, too. But I want to say this, too, is that love that I'm talking about, you don't have to be afraid. Hebrews 12:2 says this. Therefore, since we are surrounded by so great a cloud of witnesses, so many people, let us lay aside every weight, every fear, and sin which clings so closely, and let us run with endurance the race that is set before us, looking to Jesus, this new affection, the founder and perfecter of our faith, who for the joy that was set before him endured the cross, despising the shame, and is seated at the right throne of God. Okay, do you know what that joy is? That joy is you. That joy is you. When Jesus goes to the cross, it says, for the joy set before him. He's not going up like going, yeah, I'm going to have a cool party when this is over. It's going to be sweet. Totally worth it. He is thinking about you. Okay? You are that joy, which is crazy. It means that as he's on the cross, being crucified, he's thinking, I'm doing this because I can't wait to hang out with the people who are killing me. Right? This is the Savior we serve. In our faculty book club, nerd alert, we just read Karl Barber, who says this. This sounds like it should be not true. It sounds like this is heresy or something. It says, in Jesus, the fact is once for all established that God does not exist without man. Wait for it. In Jesus, the fact is once for all established that God does not exist without man. The point is, God looks at us, sees us suffering in our inadequacy. He becomes man and says, you know what, from now on, my fate is the same as yours. I am interlinked with you forever. For the joy of the cross. And the last thing is, Deuteronomy 7 basically says this. All the inadequacy, all the work, the performance we try to do, Deuteronomy 7, God even tells Israel, so why did he love us this much? It just basically says, he's like, look, I didn't love you because there were lots of you. It's not because you were more than number, or you were you were strong and all this. I love you, the Lord says, just because I love you. Okay? I love you just because I love you. If this were, step out for a second, if you knew that you could have a relationship like this with just a person, I think you'd kill for it, right? Well, hopefully not, but you know what I mean. I love you just because I love you. That's ultimately like what marriage vows are, right? It's like saying from now on, doesn't matter anything. I love you just because I love you. Okay, so what? So what? So how does this affect us? All right, I get it. Jesus loves me. Hopefully you don't respond that way, but I get it if you do. So what? Number one, if you are defined at your core by something other than your grades and your social performances and all of that, you can be inadequate. It's okay. You know, I have so many conversations with people who are bleeding all over the place. And I feel like every one of you are bleeding, and they all say, I feel like I'm the only one this way. You're not! You aren't! I swear, I have so many conversations with you who are having all these deep issues going on. You feel totally alone. You're all alone together. You know what I mean? We could be together. If you rest in Christ, see this new love, you don't have to fear being inadequate, because we're all inadequate. We've all been called out. We've all had everything stripped away. Someone took our place. Thank God. Secondly is, you can start respectfully disagreeing with your authorities. What I mean is, when your parents say, I define you by this C, you say, I don't. When your parents say, I define you by this grade, you say, you can, but Christ doesn't. Okay? If a teacher says, I define you by... I catch myself sometimes thinking about it this way. I mean, it is a sin that I need to confess every day, right? Is if a student does poorly in my class, it is tempting sometimes to think less of that student. Shame on me, right? That's not the gospel. And you can respectfully disagree with me and say, no, Christ says I'm valuable. Okay? And lastly is this, you're free to love. Dude. I wrote that late at night. Okay. When you don't need people, entertainment, performance to define you, you're free to love those things. If you're not always grabbing like, Netflix, make me feel not inadequate. Grades, make me feel not inadequate. Friends, make me feel not inadequate. Significant other, fill all the holes in my life. If you're not running around saying all those things, you can love them the way they're supposed to be loved. You're not putting so much weight on them that they're getting crushed. Right? Okay, so last two is, okay, how do we do this? Okay, I get it. All right. So I see how, if I'm loved fully by God, how this would affect me. But like, how do I get that truth to sink down into my heart? And these are the super practical things. There's two things, then I'm done. It's community and spiritual discipline. That's it. Community. A community of people who recognize they're inadequate and recognize that they need to be loved and love you is amazing. And I think about like my first semester in seminary, I'm married. Miss Barber is watching how I go about school, driven by fear. And at the end of that semester, it was so miserable for her, she said, never again. We're not going to do this again. If this is how you do school, we're not getting a master's. We're going somewhere else. That was a beautiful thing she said to me, right? The community, and you don't need a significant other. You can have a friend do this for you, right? The community, to me, came up and said, you are driven by fear. You need to be driven by something else. And if you can't do this without being driven by fear, you need to just not do it, maybe. Right? And the second thing is the spiritual discipline. What I mean by that is spiritual discipline, simply coming to the scriptures, worshiping, it connects you with the one who defines you and who loves you. Right? It allows that truth to like percolate, to sink down into your heart, that you are the loved one of God. So my application for Christians, we don't have to hide everything from each other. Find community, find the spiritual disciplines. My application for people who are not Christians, one, of course, I would invite you to this. But other than that, I would say, evaluate and ask, am I driven by fear everywhere? And how can I be driven by something that I like love? How can I be driven by love? What would that look like? Picture yourself driven by love. What would that look like? I think it would be a beautiful thing, right? So that's it. But I do want to end by this. I love you guys a lot. I love being here. And just writing this and preparing this and thinking about you guys, I am grateful that we get to be in this together. There's no other place I'd rather be. So, and I love that God loves you and loves me too. So let's pray. Father, we love you. We thank you for your grace and your goodness to us. And it's so easy for us to run back to fear, to Egyptians who will drive us, metaphorically. Father, free us from this. We have a good master. We don't have to listen to that anymore. In Jesus' name, amen.